Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our Wednesday night class. And tonight we're studying Parashat Beshalach and the holy words of Rabbi Shimshon, Pincus. And tonight he is going to talk about a topic that may have bothered many of us and hopefully answer why. So the idea is that we read in this week's Torah portion that Chamushim Yatsu'u B'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim. Let's take a look at our screen. This is in chapter 13, verse 18. It says over here towards the middle of the verse, V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. And the children of Israel were armed. They were literally armed. We'll see what that means. When they went out of Egypt. So Rashi has two interpretations. What does that mean that they were armed? The word chamushim. So the simple interpretation Rashi says is that they went out and they took weapons with them because they didn't know what was coming. They didn't know if they had any wars to fight or people to protect themselves or defend themselves against. The other interpretation is chamushim really means like chomesh, a fifth, that 1 out of every 5 Jews left Egypt. In other words, 80% of the Jews remained in Egypt, didn't even remain in Egypt, they died during the plague of darkness. So if Pincus wants to know, why did 80% of the Jews have to die in Egypt? Like, why couldn't they leave Egypt? What was their sin? What did they do so wrong that caused them to be left behind and to perish during the plague of darkness? Pincus wants to know. That's an honest question. So he gives the answer. He quotes the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim writes that the 80% of Jews that perished during the plague of darkness, this is very, very scary. Hold on to your chairs. They did not want to leave Egypt. They didn't want. They wanted to stay there. And Hashem knew, says the Chafetz Chaim. Hashem knew that those 80% were so comfortable in Egypt, they didn't want to leave, they didn't want to change, they didn't want anything to change in their world. So he had them all perish during the plague of darkness, so that the Egyptians would not see, and even the other Jews would not see, all before the redemption, before the Geulah. This is a very, very scary thing, the Chafetz Chaim says. He says that even though Hashem performed so many miracles, the 10 plagues, for, punishing the Egyptians, but for the Jews to witness and to see, there were still so many, the majority, overwhelming majority of Jews who did not have the will or the want to leave Egypt. They preferred to just stay and perish. There was only 20% of Jews who actually really wanted to leave. So Rav Pincus asks on this and he says, why did they really want to stay in Egypt? Why did they want to leave? They suffered. They were being whipped, pained, kids being murdered. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. Why would they want to stay in Egypt and endure even more pain? So Pincus very cleverly says, do you know why they wanted to leave? They didn't want to leave? It's because they started getting comfortable. That last year, while they were in Egypt, was actually an amazing year. They didn't work. They were no longer slaves. Well, they were slaves, but they weren't enslaved. All they were doing was spectating how Hashem was paying back the Egyptians for mistreating them after all these years. One plague after another, no work, just sitting back and watching. It was getting quite comfortable for them. Quite pleasant, to say the least. They didn't want to change that. They even made tons of money. Do we remember by the first plague, the plague of blood? They got so wealthy over that because the only way an Egyptian was able to get fresh water, real water, was by purchasing water from a Jew. That's major. You can charge whatever you want when water is a basic commodity that is very scarce or impossible for you to get. I mean, us from Florida, we know what hurricane season looks like. Trying to get a case of water, it's nuts. They did not want to have anything change. They wanted it the way it was. They loved their lifestyle. Rav Pincus says they loved the lifestyle of not working hard, of just kicking back and enjoying. This is why 80%, Rav Pincus says, never made it out. They weren't looking to work hard. They weren't even looking to work to connect to Hashem or to accept and receive the Torah. That's rules. That's work. The famous saying, no pain, no gain. We have to work to understand Torah. We have to work hard to get close to Hashem. But it's worth it. Wicked people couldn't care less. Oh, everything they do, they want it to be easy. That's a lazy person, a wicked person. Anyone who doesn't put effort into strengthening their Yiddishkeit, their connection with Hashem, their understanding of further educating themselves with more Torah, they won't make it. They didn't make it back then. They're not going to make it today, Rav Pincus says. What does it mean not making it today? Well, even though you may be Jewish, but if you don't work hard and show a good example to your children and your grandchildren, well, the chances of you having Jewish grandchildren and great-grandchildren are scarce. And Jewish grandchildren that are following Torah and mitzvot, committed to Torah and mitzvot, that's almost impossible unless you work hard. Because if you don't work hard, your kid's never even going to be exposed to that. And your grandchildren never be exposed to that. I would almost be happy to say that only 80% of Jews today are not working hard on their Yiddishkeit, on their Torah and mitzvot. There's more. It's more like 90%. We're as a nation, we're in a worse state than the state of the Jews when they left Egypt, with 80% of them perishing. We have a task as parents, as grandparents, as future parents, to work hard at building that relationship with Hashem, connecting to His Torah, learning His Torah, fulfilling His mitzvot. Because if we don't, it's so hard to say that our children and grandchildren will. Do you want to be like that 80% who didn't make it out? Or the 20% who did? Do you want to be one of the 10% of Jews today which are aware of the great gift and heritage that we have? Or like the other 90% which are unfortunately lost? We have an obligation to go out and bring them closer and educate and give them awareness. But first and foremost, ourselves and our family, setting the proper example and encouraging them to work hard where it counts most. Working hard in general is a great trait and attribute to teach over to our children. And sometimes it's hard, because many kids today are spoon-fed. Everything comes easy. Many kids today never even have done laundry or mop the floors. Never mind clean the kitchen or the bathroom or something like that. But as important as all that is for character development and growth, working hard to understand Torah, working hard for their bar mitzvah, working hard to do a mitzvah, to learn songs, to sing songs at the Shabbos table, to learn the Parsha. That's something we have to encourage them, incentivize them, because that's what's going to hopefully keep them and encourage them to continue doing so and pass that on to the next generations. So that's the first part of Rav Pincus's novelty for this week. And now we'll move on to a second. And the second is that this Shabbat is called the famous Shabbat Shira, the Shabbat of song, where we read the Shirat Hayam, the Az Yashir, that the Jewish people sang out all together, no script. There was no papers handed out that everyone would follow along the same words. There was a prophetic osmosis that each person knew what to sing and what the words were all together. It was magnificent. So Rabbi Pincus says, it's obvious that this idea of singing praise to Hashem doesn't end with the Jewish people singing by when they emerged from the sea, or it doesn't even end with the singing of reading this Torah portion of the Az Yashir in our tefillah and our prayer. Rather, any time of a moment of strengthening our emunah in Hashem, we're supposed to capture that moment and sing praise to Hashem. Anytime we have a great enlightenment, a great moment of gratitude, capture the moment, sing to Hashem, praise Hashem. That's the power of singing. As we sing by every Shabbat, this Shabbat special, Shabbat Shirah, the Shabbat of our song, of singing. King David, every night, would stay up and sing praise to Hashem, which eventually is what compiled this Sefer Tehillim, the book of Psalms that he wrote with divine inspiration, Ruach HaKodesh, which is just so many different ways how to praise and sing to Hashem. But we all have our own obligation to sing to Hashem and thank Him for our own personal gifts and successes that He gives us. We need to think to ourselves, if I would have been emerging from that sea, being set free from Egypt during that Exodus, well, of course I would have sang praise. There's so many miracles. Same today. So many things we take for granted. Yes, even though Hashem didn't split the sea for us, but Rabbi reminds us there are three things that the Talmud says is harder than splitting of the sea. And if the Jews sang for the splitting of the sea, all the more so for these three things, we need to sing thanks to Hashem. And I'll go through all three of them with you. Number one, the Talmud says that for Hashem to provide a livelihood for a person is harder than splitting the sea for the Jewish people. Pincus just says, put this into perspective. That means every time you open up your fridge and you look for something to eat and drink and it's there for you, and you're able to serve your family, that is more difficult than Hashem splitting the sea for the Jewish people. That should cause us to call out in prayer and praise and sing thanks to Hashem. We take it for granted. Number two, for a person to relieve themselves to go to the bathroom is more difficult than even splitting the sea. So the Talmud says, Pincus says, do we really appreciate the way Hashem created our bodies in His infinite wisdom? That our bodies are able to retain the good and the nutrients and reject all the bad and poison that comes into our body? How do we say the blessing of Asher Yatzar after we go to the bathroom? With what kavanah, what intention? Do we sing praise and thanks to Hashem for our bodily functions? An anonymous attendee of tonight's class wrote, and even harder as you get older. But seriously, we wouldn't want to mention who said that, right? Although those of us who are on know who said it. Number three, the Talmud says it's harder to get two people married than splitting the sea. To find your spouse and to get married is more difficult for Hashem, so to say, than splitting the sea for the Jewish people. As we all know how complicated shidduchim are and finding and making matches, the right one. But do appreciate and do we sing praise daily to God for finding you your spouse. Some of us have been married for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Do we realize that that was more difficult for you to find your husband, for you to find your wife, than Hashem splitting the sea? It's that severe. Do we call out in praise? Do we sing to Hashem for that? Rav Pincus says we got to start making it a priority and our nature, our habit, to be thankful and sing praise and thanks to Hashem. The Talmud says, those who sing praise to Hashem in this world will have the merit to sing praise to Hashem in the world to come. So yes, we got to start with Az Yashir on a daily basis, but we can't stop there. We need to thank and sing praise to Hashem for the personal things He does for us in our lives. The Zohar teaches us, and with this will end, the Zohar teaches us that one who sings Az Yashir word by word daily with simcha, with real joy and happiness, they are going to be sure that the same way Hashem saved the Jews with miracles and splitting the sea for them back then, over 3,300 years ago, He will do the same for us in our lives. As difficult as it was Hashem to split the sea for the Jewish people then, any miracle that a person needs in this world can be found and done when we sing Az Yashir, says the Zohar, with great simcha, joy, and happiness. Now, how could we leave that behind? It's there. We read it every day. So powerful. Use that point of the day to connect to Hashem, to sing out of joy and praise and happiness for everything Hashem does for us. It's so, so powerful. So start with Az Yashir, but don't stop there. Think of it. If the Jewish people sang praise to Hashem for splitting the sea, hopefully if we sing praise and thanks to Hashem, He will also grant us, anyone who's having issues with parnasah, with relieving oneself, going to the bathroom, and also finding your zivug, finding your real match. So we always have to be grateful and thankful to Hashem. And that's a big, big topic of this week's Torah portion in this Shabbat. A great topic of song, like this is the name of this Shabbat, Shabbat Shirah, the Shabbat of song. But what is song there for? Song is there to be grateful, to be thankful, to sing praise. This Shabbat's topic is gratitude and being thankful. And we have so much to be thankful for, and we should not take anything for granted. And if the past 2 years taught us anything, and hopefully this virus will pass over quicker than sooner than later, Bezrat Hashem, very soon. But if when all this is done, one thing can be taught to us, and we can hopefully transfer this to our children and grandchildren, and hopefully this would be some type of cure to all the trauma that's been taking place with COVID, is that we will never take things for granted again. Rather, we'll be thankful and grateful to Hashem for everything we have. Breathing, traveling, living, eating, spending time with family and friends in person. These are things that we have to be thankful for, whatever we're able to do now. Eating jelly beans together in person, Ron. These are things we have to be thankful for, whatever we're able to do today. And Bezrat Hashem, when this passes over, never forget to not take those things for granted. Because that could be one of the great messages Hashem is trying to send us, or has sent us, with what's happened over the past 2 years. Hashem bless us, that we will always have the strength and inspiration to sing to Him out of true joy and praise and gratitude for all the great things that He sends our way. And even though there's sometimes maybe bitter things that He sends our way, but when we focus and we have our eyes open for all of the beauty and success and great things He sends our way, let that overwhelm and overflow and hopefully make everything, our lives, as positive as can be, as successful as can be, as happy as can be. It's all in the way we look at it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Always a pleasure.